All right. So again, another example on the steps of metal joints is, for example, we have here platform and a fixed in a roller here. Okay. So label this as A, B, C, and Z. It's very important for you to check, of course, the distance of each points here. Okay. So the distance is Y. Again, we can apply here the moments, and of course you could also apply the summation of forces along x and y axis. But when we solve moments, if you remember, of course, moments is force multiplied by the distance. So without double checking it, you won't be able to get it. Okay. And the next one is, once you have the distance, you'll be able to get all the angles here, or the triangle. What's next? The next thing to check is the force acting on it. So what are the external forces? So if the problem gives you one external force is here, of course there will be a reaction at this point. Okay? If there are some forces here, as mentioned, if you have this kind of forces, you could convert that to x component and y component in order for you to calculate the moment. Okay? Basta, if you have seen any slanted forces, always remember to convert that to x and y component. So first you need to check the natural axis, if this is the natural x component or the x-axis and y component. For some problems, for example, naka-slant siya, okay? And then you have a force here. And your force is with the natural gravity or the natural y. However, if you're computing with reference to this is the figure's natural x-axis, but this is the global x-axis. You still need to convert this force here to the figure's x-axis and the figure's y-axis here. Yun yung mga nakakalito, okay? But you need to check what is the forces, the figure's axis, and what is the global, the actual x and y axis. Okay? So that's the first step. So the next one is equilibrium. Make sure you get or be able to determine this. So force 1, force 2, force 3, force 4. Then finally, this will be the FVD of this. So the FVD would look like this. So we have joint A. For example, ito yung reaction niya. So this one is going up there. Assume forces of AB and FAD. On the top portion of the triangle, we have assumed force. Assumed lang to because later on, malalaman natin if that's positive or negative. If it's positive, again, it means you just need to reverse the assumed force if it's compression or tension. So if this compression, therefore this is also compression here. Hindi ibig sabihin na ganito baka ganito gawin nyo. Kung nakuha nyo dito, here is compression, it will go up here on this FPD. No. If you have compression on this portion here, therefore, when you talk about joint B, this is already compression. Sasalubong siya. Okay? Otherwise, if you calculate this as tension, so therefore, ito dapat naka-tension din. Okay? If you have further question, you could ask this is asynchronous, but it's very important for you to very important portion of the asynchronous class is for you to ask if you have something that you need to clarify. Don't be shy to ask. Don't wait for the quiz before you ask if you haven't understand some portion of the video. Next one is point D. This is the center. The center, we have force AD, force BD, and then force DC. Then finally, we have on the last portion here, the reaction, the force BC, and the force DC. So ito yan. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 free body diagrams because we have 4 joints. Each of this has its own calculation. And this is very important because if you need to start here and na-satisfy naman yun na 2 unknown forces. Okay? If there are other unknown forces here, do not proceed because again, as mentioned on the steps, you should not proceed if there are more than 2 unknown. Okay? Again, very important to remember that if you start here, you should ensure that your calculation is correct because if you have a wrong step here, all of this will be affected. You need to start again at this point. How will you know if you got it correctly? If you will close this, for example, you start on this portion. Hold on. Like that. For example, you started here and you ended here. You should equate to 0. Later on, you'll see, no? Because if it didn't equate to 0, it means it's not an equilibrium. Even if you have the correct reaction forces here before we start with the methods of joints, we need to calculate all the reactions first because those reaction forces will be part of the formula or the solution. Pag di siya nag-0, you might encounter a problem or miscalculation on this portion here. Again, each of this free body diagram has its own solution. You need to double check. Okay? Let's proceed with a sample from the web.